professional studies were in law. I practiced corporate and securities law on Bay Street in Toronto, and you can't help but do some finance work for mining companies, just given the sort of composition of our economy. It wasn't something that I was focused on, but it was really when, partly I did a secondment at the Ontario Securities Commission, and there was a little bit more exposure there, but also just sort of within the realm of corporate finance. But when I joined Pear Tree over a decade ago, that was when everything really sort of coalesced around mining. In its simplest form, I, together with the great team I have here, is the single largest provider of flow-through capital for Canadian exploration companies. The more complicated answer really ties back to how Pear Tree Securities is the supplier of the shares that are required for these donation arrangements. And that actually makes the job a lot more complex, because there's a convergence of a lot of different types of skill sets and experience required to make that happen. I don't think that I felt that I was sort of discriminated against as a woman, or really had specific impediments that I had to deal with. But on reflection now, I think I see things that just weren't obvious to me at the time, because I started practicing in private practice in the mid-'80s, and nobody really had sort of a consciousness about all these things that we talk about today that deal with unconscious bias and more nuanced and subtle ways that a workplace can prevent somebody from achieving their potential. So my view is just work really hard, and you'll be rewarded for it. I was a member, but I have to say, until I got involved sort of at the committee level, I don't think I appreciated as much the range of services that PDAC provides to its members. Like a lot of people, I think initially I thought about the convention, and there is an awful lot more, and there has been a lot more since I've been involved with PDAC. I think that there's been a great deal of work done to determine what members benefit from and to improve those benefits, and more educational opportunities and other kinds of services throughout the year, not just during the convention period. I worry if we get into something that's closer to quotas that we can get the kind of backlash, which is, the only reason that we've got these diverse people on boards is that they had to be there, and that we're actually, not selecting, the best candidates, and the implications of that could be worse than the proposed solution. Having said that, I'm disappointed in how slow things have moved as far as increasing the number of women on boards, particularly in the mineral sector. The one thing I would say, though, that I've really been bothered about in this area is that the existing requirements for disclosure as to just the number of women you have on board, and there's new requirements that are coming in for federally incorporated companies that are broader than that speak to disclosure about your policies around diverse practices with regard to your board composition, not just based on gender. The application of those rules is only to companies listed on the TSX, not the venture exchange. And most of the mineral sector companies that I deal with in my business are on the venture exchange, not on the TSX. For me personally, I think one of the biggest things, given that part of my role is co-chairing the Finance and Taxation Committee, would be the extension of the mineral exploration tax credit for a full 5 years, because that's just, everybody, for previous years, in the first quarter of the year, have been kind of biting their nails, just waiting to see whether or not that tax credit would be renewed. And, without that, there, I think, would be a lot less financings that could be done successfully. I'm not surprised given how male dominated an industry it is. In fact, some ways I say that's pretty good, like on a relative basis. I do think that as an organization, the PDAC has worked really hard over the number of years that I've been on the board to improve governance in many respects. There's been a lot of board renewal, and there are a lot more women on the PDAC board now, and I think a lot more involvement from women generally. Realistically, whether it's the PDAC or any other organization, like until you get a little bit more of the numbers coming through the ranks, like right from the educational institutions, like through to junior positions and then on up. I mean, you do need sort of a pool to choose from. I'm not surprised that there have only been two, but I do think that a lot of action has occurred recently that will allow for a lot more really good candidates to come forward.